Welcome to Success in Motion. Join us as we dive deep with top leaders, entrepreneurs, and professionals, uncovering strategies to grow, scale, and succeed.
Welcome back to the Success in Motion podcast. I'm your host, Alex Burho, and today we're going to be joined by Marci Wilhelm. And she is the retired president of MedPartners HIM and has some cool stuff to share about her story with us today. So Marci, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's my first ever podcast.
Good. Well, I'm sure you're going to do great. I'm super excited for what you're going to share with us.
Okay.
So Marci, I know you're retired now, but can you share just a little bit, give us the 10,000-foot overview of your story of how you became president of MedPartners HIM and kind of what you did on your exit?
Sure. I moved to Tampa after barely graduating from college in 1996 or 1997. I literally had to negotiate with my audiology professor to give me a D so that I would have enough credits to graduate. And he made me raise my right hand and swear I would never practice as a speech pathologist, which I did. No, an audiologist. It was audiology. That's what I got a D in. So I moved to Tampa and got a job, working for a staffing company. And I worked there for a couple months and figured out they had a lot of inefficiencies and some morale issues. And I was very naive. And so I waited till my division director came to town and I gave him a whole presentation because I was on my college speech and debate team. And I felt like that was like a strength of mine and I was going to get promoted. And they pretty much told me that I could leave that day and that probably wasn't the right place for me. So I got fired. And a couple months later, another local staffing company hired me and I got some experience in healthcare. I didn't know at the time it was 1997, the Balanced Budget Act had just passed. Congress had just passed that, which changed hospital reimbursement theory and measure. So I ended up starting a career in the mid-revenue cycle space of acute care hospitals.
Awesome. And so from there, how did you go from, I'm assuming relatively entry level to becoming the president?
I spent 7 years working for two different public companies in that space. Both of them, we were pretty much pioneering this position in staffing. It had existed for quite a bit, but nobody was really staffing a person with this particular skill set in acute care hospitals. And after doing that for 7 years, two different public companies, I was getting a new boss and I was getting divorced. And I just felt like I really didn't have anything to lose to just go out on my own and do it for myself instead of other public companies. And I kept in touch with some people I'd worked with in the past. And one of my account managers I'd worked with, we always had a great rapport. We made a lot of money together. He was in the same space, like wanting to go out on his own. So the two of us got together and then we partnered with some other friends of his in South Florida that had a technology staffing company. And so we kind of shared all of our back office services. And I didn't know it at the time, at that whole 10,000 hours, like people say, you become an expert once you've hit 10,000 hours. If you work like I think the average work year is like 2,080. If you work full time, 2 weeks vacation. And so it put me right about that hour being a mastery. So it was, I guess, the right time.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's awesome you were able to be so successful with it. So along kind of that journey, especially kind of stepping out. Well, let's say someone that's listening wants to kind of step out on their own. They have, 5 to 10 years of experience, but they're like, ooh, I'm not sure where to go. What tips or tricks would you have for someone branching out on their own?
I would say definitely find other people in your same space that have stepped out on their own and ask them how they did it. In my situation, we had partners that had already gone out on their own in the technology space, and I did not want to partner with them. I didn't know these guys. They had these goofy names like Harris and Vito. I'm like, they sound like they're going to break our legs. Like, these sound like mobsters, And I love them dearly to this day. And I'm so glad we partnered together because I probably would have fallen on my face. But, I would say talk to other people that have done it, but also consider partnerships because entrepreneurship is a long, lonely road. And partnerpreneurship, if that's a term, especially if you partner with people that have strengths in the areas that you don't, you have somebody to bounce things off of. And some people think at the time that we started back in 2006, I thought, I don't want anybody telling me what to do or how to do it. I don't want to have to deal with other people's opinions or thoughts, but that's really where the magic happens, is to not just be all in your head, but be able to have a room of people that have a vested interest in it being successful, just like you, and that bring an area of talent and contacts, experience to the table.
Yeah. And I bet, being able to bounce those ideas off each other really helped.
It was a fight sometimes, a lot of times. It was a dog fight. But it made the magic, we've forgiven each other for the most part because the outcome was good. But it's not easy partnership, but I think it was better than the alternative.
That's awesome. I don't hear that perspective very often, but I love it. So talk to me a little bit about what were some of the things that might have come easier to you that other people might struggle with?
That's a really good question. I have dyslexia. So I'm used to, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and you didn't get 10 more minutes to take your test or whatever they do now. It was just sort of, you just had to work harder. You just had to outwork other students, and you still felt like you were barely accomplishing what was the minimum standard. So I think that sort of prepared me, made me a little bit more resilient, and I had a built-in motor that worked harder. So from academic success doesn't always translate into employment success. And so because I was used to working harder, I think it just applied when we started the company, and I just wasn't going to give up. With the adversities you face, challenge after challenge, but you just don't give up because you don't really have an option.
Yeah. And I love that, mindset of you just outwork others. You just keep going, you keep showing up every day.
Yeah. And it's not always like hours in, hours out, but it's like it's constantly on your mind. You're constantly thinking about it, so you don't have to be like sitting at your desk grinding it out. It just drive in the car with your radio off and some silence and let your brain think about it and ponder things. Creates time for yourself to be bored so that you have some time to work through some of the problems, and you can come up with the solutions. Just don't quit.
I actually really like that perspective of, take more time, listen, think about it in the shower, think about it in the drives, just give yourself time to ponder on it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I love it. Now, what other things did you guys struggle with as you branched out on your own, as you're starting to grow? What hurdles did you have to overcome?
We had so many. Neither one of us we both came from large companies. So we were used to working for companies that had an IT department. If you had a problem with your email, if the printer broke, you knew who to call. We didn't have any of that. So I became I wasn't just the recruiter anymore, but I was now the IT person. I was HR, billing, collections, well, not necessarily billing and collections. We shared those services with our partners in South Florida. They gave us a huge leg up. But yeah, it was different to go out on your own and not have all those systems that you sort of take for granted within that your company provides. But we figured it out. I installed a phone system. We had 16 different users on it. I think we found out in 2008 that somebody was stealing our long distance or something, and like calling, there was all these calls to Afghanistan, and the FBI wanted to know like why we were calling Afghanistan. I was like, I swear to God, somebody stole our phone numbers. I don't know. But you have all these unique challenges that come up, and You just figure them out. I had a friend that worked for Outback, and she did their telecommunications. And so she kind of pointed me in the right direction, and you just figure it out.
Yeah. So can you go ahead and just walk us through, you've kind of shared your story from when you broke out on your own and started yours. Can you walk us through what it looked like as you grew it and got to a point where you could retire from being the president of that company?
A lot of different ups and downs. I would say some of the biggest forks in the road were when both my partner and I were both producers. So we worked in the business as well as on the business. And we identified as producers. That's what we had always done. We'd always been sales, like top of the leaderboard. He had some executive training and some leadership training, but mine was all very, casual, kind of leading my boss from behind or leading other team members on the team, but never an official title. So when we decided to stop working in it and start working on it, that was a big change. We took a lot of the commission that we were ourselves earning to kind of, keep the two fish in the casserole, and started passing that out to the people that we were hiring. And so finding a comp plan where you're able to pay somebody for the work that they're doing, but they didn't necessarily kill that business, and you don't want to make their comp too high so that they're not motivated to go out and get new business. That was a big challenge. But once we really focused on replacing ourselves with better, smarter people to free us up to work on the business, that was it took about 1.5 to 2 years. And then we saw we started reaping the rewards of those benefits. But in the beginning, it was cuts in pay and watching our employees make more money than we did.
And that can be hard.
Yeah.
So what were some of kind of the emotional, ties, or how were you able to distance yourself emotionally from being the producers to now let's work on the business?
That's a really tough thing to do. And you have to check your ego at the door and realize that you want to hire people that are better than you. You want to train them and make them better than you. You want to create an environment. I just took all the things that I didn't like about the companies that I had worked for. When bad things happen, whether I made a mistake or my candidate failed at a job, I failed to see a red flag or failed to predict, the future. Like, I tried to take the shame and the blame out of that and normalize failure and make it to where, like, there's only 3 things that'll get you fired: lie, cheat, steal. That's it. Mistakes happen. Let's learn from them. That, I think, helped my team relate to me a lot. And then that helped me move more into a leadership role and feel more comfortable identifying myself as a leader instead of like imposter syndrome, thinking that maybe I shouldn't be in this leadership role. And, why did I, who promoted me? I promoted myself.
Yeah. So what kind of made the decision, or when did you decide, okay, we've built this business, it's doing really well. When did you decide you were ready to retire from it?
To exit, yeah. That's a really tough thing to do. And I don't really know. I think you really have to be ready for it. I definitely was not ready for it, like mentally and emotionally. My partner and I had kind of come to the end of the road in our partnership and our collaboration together. I think he was sort of, kind of tired of me a little bit. I was kind of tired of him a little bit. I mean, I loved him. I respected him, but, I just, things were happening in our industry that were, everything was pointing to technology really being a disruptor in the upcoming years. And we would have had to make big capital investments that we really hadn't prepared for. And we didn't have the internal knowledge to know how to handle some of the things that are happening now, like with artificial intelligence. So it just seemed like the right time. And our revenue and our EBITDA was to a point where we knew if we got the right multiple, which companies in our space, there wasn't a lot of comps out there. It's not like real estate. And you can go see like how many houses in the mid-revenue cycle space have sold, in your area. There's just not a lot out there. But we thought if we got a decent multiple, we could probably be in a place where we wouldn't have to ever work again and we could retire. But I didn't think about what I would do when I retired.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the trick. That was the thing that was a big surprise.
Yeah. So if someone is looking at selling their business, making an exit, what tips or tricks would you have for them?
I would first ask them why. Do they want more free time? Do they want to take some chips off the table? Is it like in our case where there's a technology investment that's coming and expertise that is needed that they don't want to take that risk? Because if it's just that they want more, more free time and less hassle, I would first suggest possibly looking at hiring a CEO or company president and creating a board and making yourself a chairman or chairwoman and not retiring, keeping your business, because it's nice to still have that entity and be evergreen and have it producing revenue for you. When you retire, your income comes in different ways. It can come from investments and different things, but it's not coming from your company anymore. And that's just weird. It just feels weird. You can get used to it, I guess, but I'm still not used to it. So I would say first figure out your why for wanting to sell. And then I would say, think about what you do now for fun. Somebody gave me this advice when I was 35. I told him I want to retire when I was 45. He said, well, what are you going to do when you retire? I said, whatever I want. And he said, well, what do you do now for fun? And I was like, oh, I just signed up for, I just enrolled in a master's program and health informatics, and I go to these conferences. He's like, what? No, for fun. I'm like, that's kind of fun. He's like, that's all work related. And I was like, oh yeah, I don't know what I do for fun. I said, I've always wanted to be a boater. He's like, you can afford a boat, go buy a boat. And I was like, okay. And so it stuck with me, and I was like, yeah, I need to have a hobby. And so when I thought, well, when I sell my company, then I'll have the freedom to go circumnavigate the East Coast, go all the way up and do the Great Loop. And it didn't work out in my situation. I had a really bad trauma about 6 months after I sold, and I was not able to go boating. So just kind of sitting there, when everything's sort of stripped away, maybe you have a bucket full of money, but you're not getting the things that you enjoyed out of your work, like being part of a team, solving complicated problems, the adrenaline rush that comes from your team closing a deal or, overcoming some huge obstacle. You miss those things when they're gone, when they're not there. And so you have to find another way to replace that, whether it's mentoring and sharing in other people's success and helping them become successful. If you can, get that need met of like that excitement of seeing them accomplish something, you just have to find another way to replace the things that you get from work that you don't realize you really enjoy.
Yeah. So what have you kind of done to help with that transition of finding new hobbies, finding new things to really enjoy?
Meditate.
Sounds so excited.
Oh yeah. I just started trying things that I always wanted to try, but maybe always said I never had time for. So, at least once a month, I try to do something that I've never done before, and nothing crazy, like not skydiving or anything dangerous, but like going on a podcast. I'm like, okay, I've never done that before. I'll try that, just to kind of keep things interesting and keep learning. I sign up for continuing education classes on a plethora of different topics, from artificial intelligence to entrepreneurial investing to, health and well-being. But to always be learning and growing, that was part of my work career that I really enjoyed. That was why I liked the conferences, was to get the education. So now I just go to education on different topics.
That's awesome. And a great way to keep your mind active and going. Mm-hmm. So something you've mentioned a few times has been, when you're working, you're bringing active revenue, but then once you exit, now you don't have that same active stream. So something I love learning about is creating passive income, or what do you do to help keep something coming in? What have been your thoughts on creative, that passive income? Where have you looked in that realm?
So we were really fortunate. It was sort of just the path of our business. When my partner and I partnered with our other partners down in South Florida, they had originally started a tech staffing company. And so then we partnered under them, and they factored us, and then we gave them a percentage of our business. And then down the road, a few years later, came another guy who wanted to start a different type of healthcare staffing business. And we did the same thing for him. And so for a while, I was getting, even though I had kind of cashed out and gotten like my one lump sum, I was getting some passive income from his business. It sold in 2021, and there was another small lump sum, but we all rolled 20% into private equity. So I would say, like, if you have income coming in from your business and there's an opportunity for you to partner with somebody else by factoring them in a way, and like sharing your knowledge, sharing back resources and things like that, so that when you do exit, you're still having some kind of a percentage come in that way. That's one of the things that we did. And it just worked out great. And now I get to see him, run the show. He's the chairman of the board, and it's really fun to see him hit it and kill it. It's his time, Other things, I have one financial investor, and I'm pretty well balanced in different things in the S&P, and a little bit of private equity. Right now, private equities, I don't want to try to talk about PE because I don't really understand it. I know that my advisor advised me to buy a lot of it, and we sold a lot of it last year at quite a big loss. So I would say just, live within set a budget up for yourself and live within your means. You don't need 6 houses. It's 6 roofs and 6 sinks and 6 toilets that break, and it's just a lot of shit. Sorry, I shouldn't swear, but I've seen a lot of people go out and buy all these houses and boats and cars, and it's just more stuff to take care of. So I would say create a budget and live within it. Splurge, take care of yourself, but budget wisely. And then when if you do hit the big one, be really careful with friends and family, and everybody's going to come ask you to invest in their company or in their widget they created, or you're all of a sudden going to become the person in your family that can solve everybody's problem. And so, consider, gifting people a one-time gift, like a one-time lump sum. And like saying, with no strings attached, like, I love you, I want to give this to you for you to do whatever you want with. And, I just, because you're my sister or you're my mom or you're my dad or whatever, and just have it just be that one lump type sum. So because you don't want your relationships to be deteriorated because you have some kind of financial gain. You'll start thinking, oh, maybe they just invite me over for Christmas because, they want the college tuition paid or something like that. Don't let it get in the way of your family relationships.
That makes sense. That's a great aspect to consider as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Marci, you've had a lot of really cool thoughts, a lot of things I know I'm going to think about as we move forward. If someone wants to reach out and learn more either about branching out on their own or planning an exit, what's the best way they can get a hold of you?
I would say probably just message me on LinkedIn. I check LinkedIn, not super regular, but I mean, if it's a 911, then they should reach out to you, and you've got my email and you can reach out to me.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, again, thank you for coming on here. Thanks for giving your thoughts and your tips, and I appreciate all you said.
Yeah, best of luck.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning into Success in Motion. Want to share your story? Visit successinmotionpodcast.com/guest to apply and be featured on the show.